I'm going to show you my process of how I make my tattoo stencils using Procreate. Now, I use this method every single day, and yet it does take a little bit more work. I think this is the best way and the most flexible way to make a tattoo stencil. My name is Ryan Methric, also known as rm.ink on Instagram. If you have any questions, make sure to drop me a message and feel free to check out my work while you're there. Okay, let's jump into Procreate. So here I have the image prepared that I'm going to do the stencil of. I chose a rose just to keep this very simple so I can show you my process. Now the first thing I do is I go up here to the layers tab and I create a couple new layers. Make sure that you draw your stencil on the layer that's above the image. So here's the image, here's the layer above. Make sure you're in that layer. There's a bunch of different brushes in Procreate and there's no real rules on which ones you want to use. I personally will show you the one that I use. So go here to the brush tool, I go to inking and I use the technical pen. I like that one the best. Here I can adjust the size of the brush. Here's large. I go for about maybe that size, just trying to get a feel of what size you want to do. And make sure your opacity is all the way up. Go back to the layer menu. Take your image here and click the little end and I adjust the opacity. And I usually go down to about, anywhere from 60 to 70 depending on what image that you're using or how dark it is. For this one, we'll say about 65. That looks good to me. Remember, make sure you're in the layer above your image. That way when you draw the stencil, it's not connected to the image. There's a bunch of different ways of doing this, but I do this every single day. And I love this technique because I'm in full control of my stencil. And I'm gonna show you after I'm done, I can resize it, flip it, and do whatever I want. I think this is the most flexible way to make a tattoo stencil. It is a little bit more work, but I mean, we're not here to cut corners. Pinch and zoom. I'll start off right here. Take the black line and I literally just trace the tattoo. I'll trace the rose just like this. I'm gonna adjust the opacity down a little bit more on this so you can really see what I'm doing here. The first thing that I usually do is I'll just trace the large shapes of the tattoo. I'm gonna do this a little bit roughly. I'm not gonna make this super pristine for you, but just enough so you can get the idea. I'll kind of just trace the perimeter first of everything. Once you get used to doing this, you can move faster and faster, and it's honestly not that bad. One of the main benefits of hand drawing your stencils like this, one of the main reasons why I like doing it is because it familiarizes you with what tattoo you're gonna do, especially if it's a portrait. If I'm doing a portrait of somebody, I always use this method because I wanna already draw the portrait and I can remember what all the features were like, and it really gets me familiar with what I'm about to tattoo and put on somebody for life. Some artists do think this is a lot of work, but to each of their own. This really works good for me. Now I just trace all the shapes that I see. What's good about this method is you can put as much or as little detail as you want. I get all the big shapes done, all the shadow areas and all the highlight areas. So if I'm getting in towards the center like this, there's no reason why you can't lower the thickness of your line a little bit. I do that all the time, just so when you print the stencil, it won't blur out or blob on you. And remember, there's no rules to this. I mean, you can. This is yours. This is your art. You can do this however you want. It does take a little bit longer, but I mean, in the end, it's really worth it. And when you print and stencil this, it's absolutely precise. I'm gonna speed this process up just a little bit and I'll talk some more. Okay, so at this point, I'm done with the main big shapes, the main contour of the piece. And now you can go back to the layers and turn off your rows and you can see just the shape. So that's what I have so far for the stencil. Now you can leave it at this. If this is good enough for you and you just want the rough shape, you can do that. Sometimes I do that. But if you want more detail and you want the shadows and to make this more accurate, I'm gonna show you how you can do that. So go back, make sure you're on that above layer. You can even go on another layer in case you wanna delete that stuff. Now here's what I do. I go back in and I'll do the shadows. And what I personally like to do, so here's the lights right here. You can hard line it like that, but sometimes it gets a little confusing. So I would just do dashes. I'll just dash around all the highlights like this. And then the shadows, I'll dash all around the shadows. And I do it once again, I do it very roughly. It depends on what I'm doing. Something organic like a flower, it's pretty lenient. You can kind of make up your own shadows and shapes as you're tattooing. If you're doing a portrait of someone's family member, you have to be very precise where the highlights are and the shadows. That is the two most important things, is getting the highlights and the shadows completely perfect. Now, if you zoom up all these little veins in the rows here, I mean, you can go in and do each and every one of those. You can do all the fine details like this. I'm not gonna do it all on this one, but I'm just trying to demonstrate. You can make these as complex or as simple as you want, but I'm gonna continue to do all the shadows here in the highlights. So this highlight wraps around here. We'll do a little bit of the curvature here so you can get the shadow shape. Shadow runs through here. And every artist has a little bit different techniques for doing this. Sometimes if there's a super dark black area, I'll mark it with X's. So this area here is usually solid black. I'll put little X's so when I print out the stencil, I know what's black on there. We'll do it here too. Here's the shadow, we'll put a little X in there. We'll put X's around it. This area is dark here, we'll put a little X. And I mean, that's really it. It's really as simple as that. So we'll go back, we'll turn off our rows, and there is your stencil. There is your stencil for the tattoo. Now, once again, you can do this and code it however you want. I like to do little X's so I know where the black is. If the tattoo is very complex, sometimes little key codes like this will really help. Now, what's cool about this is you do have this on the second layer above your image. You can turn on and off your image, and you can bring the opacity back up on your image and check it. If you need to change anything, you can do that. But generally, this is perfect. And what's cool about this is you can resize this, move it around. You can print this. So here's what I do. I'll take this image and I'll go up into the settings and share, and I will email a JPEG version of this to my email. And then I can print out this exact image and I can resize it to any size or shape that I want. And if it doesn't fit, I can go back in here and I can just straight manipulate this stencil any way I want. I can erase stuff, I can redraw it. This is a very forgiving way, and this is the best way that works for me personally, that I do every single day, of how I make my tattoo stencils in Procreate. There are a variety of different ways to make a tattoo stencil, and artists do all types of different things, but that way that I just showed you in Procreate, that works best for me. I use it every day. It gets me familiar with my tattoos, and I'm ready to go. If you like the content and it was helpful, make sure you click the bell, give me a subscribe, jump below in the comments. If you want to see more Procreate tutorials on how to do tattoo designs, I can also show that. If you want a full beginner's guide tutorial on Procreate, I can also film that video, so let me know what you guys think. And other than that, thanks for stopping by.